Yo,
What's going on, y'all?
what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Report Card. I'm your host, Dame Diddy.
Ambitious Ace.
Yeah, man, and today, what we going to do, man, last week, we did our top 10 video game series of all time. Now, this week, we're going to do our top 5 video game consoles. You see that? I'm talking so much slower than Reza Islam. So much slower. Shout out to Reza Islam, man. He was out here in the AS yesterday.
All right.
Yeah, he was doing some interviews and stuff like that, man. If you don't follow Reza Islam, man, you're missing out.
Okay.
Follow Reza Islam. Anyway, top 5 video game consoles of the generation. Not the generation. I guess the generations of our asses being alive. Generation of our asses being alive. But, you know, it is what it is, man. And you want to start out first, or you want me to start out first?
I can start it off. Going from 5 to 1, right?
Sure, man.
All right, so at number 5, I got Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis was always the console for me that you could find other games than the Super Nintendo that they didn't have. So it was just that one system that I always remember going to contrast to Super Nintendo, because they had some of the games, like, you know, if I recall, didn't Mortal Kombat have blood on the Sega version?
ABACABB.
Yeah. So, you know, Sega Genesis had certain stuff like that, because as a kid, you're like, oh, I want to see what everybody else is talking about and everything like that. Plus, it was one of my first consoles. And, of course, you know, it had games like Sonic, Streets of Rage, and everything like that. It had some really, really good memories, you know, with families on those games. So I had to put that on my list.
Mortal Kombat on the SNES, they had throw up and sweat. Some of the fatalities were cool, though, like Sub-Zero. Yeah. Number 5 on my list, man. This is the only handheld console on my list, period.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with a slight step up of the original, and that is Game Boy Color.
All right.
Game Boy Color came out. I bought it for Pokemon, for sure, when Pokemon did come out in color. I had Pokemon Red, and eventually I ended up getting blue. Never got yellow or green, because I remember green was a big thing, and a couple of people had the Japanese green version in my school, and I'm like, you mother. That was the only way to get a real Mew on top of that, right?
If I remember correctly.
I felt like you had to have a Japanese version to get a real
I forgot.
Mew.
It's been a while.
But either way, man, that also had a dope Legend of Zelda game on it that I bought. I can't even remember which one it was called, but Game Boy Color. I just remember, you know, my dad trying to put me on punishment, and I was just like, ha, you can't take this because I don't need to use your power. I paid for this myself. Shout out to Game Boy Color, man. I had cut grass to save up for that, man. You can't. You put me on punishment. You could take my Sega. You could take all that. You could tell me don't use your power, but I can still use that Game Boy Color because it takes batteries, and I got money.
I got money.
It wasn't a lot. It was just enough to buy
I like
batteries.
that. I got money. Next up, number 4, I got Super Nintendo. Now, that was truly my first console, but, like, you know, I played the most on that system. I played literally everything. I remember my 6th or 7th birthday, I got NBA Live and Super Mario Brothers. From there, it's history. Okay. But, you know, Super Nintendo had the longest lifespan of a console, I think, ever. Really? I mean, it lasted a while. Even when PS1 came out, Super Nintendo was still kicking. So, I mean, it's just the iconic system to me. There's so many games that I could name off. I'll be sitting here all day, but, you know, just an iconic console.
So, number 4 on my list, iconic console in its own right. One of the long-lost, forgotten consoles. The console that everybody always asks for there to be a remake of, and that is a SEGA DREAMCAST.
I'm glad you put that on your
One
list.
of the absolute best video game consoles out there.
Yes.
I know the game library wasn't huge because some of you mofos hacked this console, printed off games, and Sega couldn't figure out how to recoup their money because all y'all was pirating.
Yeah.
But Power Stone
Ooh.
2, Sonic the Hedgehog Adventure, Sonic Adventures 2, like they the NBA, the NFL 2K1, the best football game ever created. It was on Dreamcast. And it was an untouchable system for a long period of time. People still respected it. People were upset when they basically said they weren't making any more consoles because the Dreamcast was a work of art.
Yeah.
If they could have only had that security patch in there to protect the console, Sega would still probably be making consoles today.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't even be talking about there being an Xbox.
Yo, that was going to be my number 5. It's at a close number 6, but Sega Genesis I just have a lot of fine memories of, but good ass pick. I like that. At number 3, I got Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64, they took it to a whole new level that myself at the time was not expecting. Just with the whole party game aspect of everything, like, you know, Mario Party, Smash Brothers. You got the games that revolutionized the FPS genre, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. You had Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, which is a classic.
Star Fox 64.
Star Fox 64. There was a number of games on there, but I think it was just the innovation of the system.
Pokemon Snap.
Everything took it into the 3D realm. So a whole bunch of games that we were used to for the 2D and everything like that, it really evolved what you loved about Mario and Zelda and
Pilot
other games
Wings
like
64.
that. Pilot Wings, all that.
Wave Race 64.
So it really took that leap in a generation from the games that I was used to growing up and just opened up a whole new world to just the possibilities of gaming. So that's why I love Nintendo 64.
You remember when they introduced that controller and everybody like, yo, man, the damn bear claw?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember thinking it was stupid, but then once I played with it, I was like, I get it.
Yep.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Next up on my list, man, is not Dreamcast, but obviously the Dreamcast holds a place in my heart because GoldenEye and Perfect Dark are two of the
You
best.
said not Dream, you mean 64?
64, yes,
Yeah.
not on my list. But Perfect Dark and GoldenEye are two of the best first-person shooters ever created in my mind. I can still play them today, especially if we playing with remote mines because I'm going to toss them and blow them up on your ass. That was fun to do.
Yeah.
Next on my list, one of the best consoles ever created, and that'd be Super Nintendo. You know, the classic amount of games that were on this, man. Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past was hands down one of the best Zelda games ever created. We also had Super Punch Out. Like, people were so excited about Super Punch Out coming to follow up. And then, man, there was a whole bunch of obscure games that came out on the console aside from just the Super Metroids and the Star Foxes and stuff like the Lost Vikings. I know that was on Sega Genesis too, but it just looked better on the Super Nintendo. Mortal Kombat looked better on Super Nintendo. When Mortal Kombat 2 came out on Super Nintendo, they put the blood back in because they were just like, all right, man.
Yeah,
They had Killer Instinct. When Killer Instinct came out, it was like that's when Rare used to actually be good.
There you go.
One of the best fighting games. It could have outdone Mortal Kombat. I don't care what nobody said. It's
You're
just
right.
they dropped the ball on
You're
it. The
right.
combo
A
system
lot
was
of
way
people will
better.
agree with you on that too.
Combo system was way better, but Xbox destroyed that company. And it's just an iconic console in every sense of the word.
Well, I know I get a lot of flack from me recently on this brand, but my number 2 is Xbox 360. Because as much as I can't knock that most of my gaming time that generation was spent on the 360.
Let me just ask a
What's
question.
up?
Was it because you couldn't afford a PS3? Because I sure as hell couldn't when it came out.
That was one of the cases.
Okay, that's all I want.
Most
I just wanted
definitely.
confirmation. That shit was $600.
Because I got my first 360.
Did you get a red ring?
Huh? Oh, of course I got
How many
red
times?
ring. About 3 times. Yeah. But I got my Xbox from
They should make a t-shirt.
roommate of mine.
They should make a T-shirt with how many
And-
times you had the red ring on it.
About 3 times. But I mean, other than that, man, and all jokes aside, as much as I'm not really in Microsoft's good graces right now, I cannot lie that most of my time was spent from the carryover from the Xbox, because I own an Xbox late in the generation. I had got it from a family member. I didn't buy it. But I played enough on games on it to want to get a 360. And, you know, when the PS3 came out, I wasn't shelling out that 600. And plus, there was not even that many games that I wanted at the time on there. But when 360 came out, I think it wasn't even just the fact about the games. It was just the online ecosystem that really got me to playing it, because when I first got a 360, I didn't play online for like 4 5 months. But when I got on there, it was just like, whoa, okay, because the whole dashboard then was designed for you to be connected online to actually get more enhancements out of multiplayer and everything like that. And I feel like that just opened up the whole world for me just for the online. I know PS2 had online functionality and everything like that, but I think Microsoft took it a step further during that generation because even PS3 wasn't really as good online at first until later in the generation. So that's why for me, and then there's a whole bunch of iconic games for me on Xbox 360 that we spoke about last week: Mass Effect, Halo, and a number of other games that I will always remember my experiences for single player and multiplayer wise. So 360 is one of the most iconic consoles, despite the Red Ring of Death, unfortunately.
Number 2 on my list, man, this is hands down one of my favorite consoles. If I was going to get a tattoo back in the day, it was going to be of this company.
Oh,
I don't have no tattoos. Don't plan on it either. That is Sega Genesis.
word.
It was not my first video game console. I did own a regular Nintendo. Sega Genesis was our second console, and I absolutely loved that console. I remember playing Sonic, bruh. Nobody here can tell me that Sonic 1, 2, and 3 and Sonic and Knuckles don't have some of the most iconic music soundtracks there is,
Yes.
period. Some of the most recognizable characters, iconic characters.
Yep.
I remember Ultra Beast. My friend put me on the Ultra Beast. I was like, yo, this game is so dope. It's super whack now. But at that time, it was revolutionary. The graphics were crazy. Toe Jam and Earl was ridiculous. When they came out with that Panic on Funkatron, bruh, that was it. The Comic Zone was crazy. The Vector Man was crazy.
Ooh, Vector Man. Shout out.
Yeah, bruh. Come on, man. The Eternal Warriors fighting game.
Wasn't
What the
Earthworm
hell
Jim on
happened to
Sega
that?
Genesis
Yes,
too?
it was.
Yes, Earthworm Jim.
But I feel like it was on multiple consoles.
Yeah,
so
it was
I don't
on
count.
Super Nintendo.
Yeah, so I don't count that.
Yeah.
They did have,
But it was
it was
right?
different. Yeah, it was definitely different.
Because like even games like Aladdin, it was different on
Aladdin,
Sega. It was
Aladdin's
better
on Sega was better.
Yeah.
Even though the Aladdin on Super Nintendo looked better, the Madden on Sega was played better and it was more difficult.
Yep.
But that last fight for Jafar on the regular Aladdin on Super Nintendo was cool.
Yeah.
Never played the Lion King though. But do you remember Eternal Warriors?
Barely.
The Sega exclusive
but I
fighting
do.
game?
I remember the cover.
Bruh, that game was so fire, and I don't know what happened to the company that made that.
Yeah.
They need to come back out of retirement and make some cool fighting games. The Sega Genesis it has a special place in my heart. I played that console for so long. I absolutely loved that. When they came out with the 6-button controller, it was finally
I was just about
on.
to say that the gamepad was iconic.
It was, but I remember trying
it
to
was
play
the perfect
Street
one for-
Fighter, and you had to push the start button to switch to the kicks, and I didn't like that. And when they came out with that 6-button controller, it was on and popping.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Great console, man.
Most def.
And oh my God, there was so many games that only came out on Sega Genesis, like Wiz and Liz. I don't know if you ever played that.
That's wow.
You played Wiz and Liz?
But I remember somebody who had it.
Bro, that shit was fire.
Yeah.
Like it fucking helped my imagination as a kid. You were playing these two wizards. Me and my brother would play it all the time. And you go around and get fruit, and then you make recipes, and they give you certain things that help you prosper to the game. We never beat the game, but it was fire. And I know Tetris was big, but I used to play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Like if it snowed and we couldn't go to school that day, me and my brother would be like, all right, let's have school on Dr. Robotnik. And we play Dr. Robotnik and try to beat all of his robots, because they actually made you really think. In order to beat them, you had to be on something. So it was dope. Sega Genesis is the shit.
At number 1, I got one of my most fondest consoles of all time. And as I pointed out, I was more into the single player space. I was never online that much because at the time I just couldn't have the luxury of that, connectivity. But this console had the staple of single player games, in my opinion, from release to release, even if it wasn't a mainstream release, and that is PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 have some of the most iconic games to release on the system. I mean, I'm talking about like Metal Gear Solid. That's the one that just comes to mind first off because of what they done for the genre, in my opinion. But I played a lot of RPGs, Final Fantasy, Dark Cloud, um, Vagrant Story. There's a whole lot of things on there.
Fight for New York.
Def Jam, Fight for New York. I mean, there were so many. There was something for everybody on PS2. If you had a PS2, you could not say there was not a game for you. They released so many great titles on that system, and it's just the whole package for me. I think that generation was flawless. That took what we loved from PS1 and just I don't know how they did it, man. And just the design of the console, it was just so cool back then. Everybody was going crazy how the black and blue, So dope.
So, man, number one on my list. You know, when I do my list, I like to tell you I won't debate with you about my number one or what's the number one console or gaming series or whatever. Same thing here. It's unequivocal number one. Is no debating it, in my opinion. It is the PlayStation 2, the best video game console ever created. Bruh, Grand Theft Auto 3.
Oh, yeah. How could I forget that off the list?
was-
All the Grand Theft Autos, that
all of them were.
generation.
I mean, Xbox didn't get them until way late.
They didn't get to 4. Yeah.
Yeah, Nah,
They didn't get-
they got a
The
double
Xbox
pack.
kit?
They got a double pack that had
They did have San Andreas. You're right.
They got a double
Okay.
pack that had Vice City.
But they
and
didn't
Grand
get
Theft
3
Auto.
at first, though. That
Yeah,
was just
no.
PlayStation 2 who
Yeah.
had it at first.
I think they
You're
got
right.
San Andreas at the same time, but the
Yeah.
first two,
They
Vice
didn't
City,
get.
no, they
You're right.
didn't get. It was PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah.
I remember playing Grand Theft Auto on PlayStation 1, but the PS2, like I always say, that was a revolutionary game.
Yeah.
NBA Street,
Woo!
my favorite
Volume
basketball. Volume 1 and 2, and even 3. 3 was
3
on.
was cool.
3 was on
cool.
PS2 as well.
Yep.
And the long list of PS2 games. It was a ridiculous amount of video games. I had so many PS2 games.
Yeah.
It was such a great console. The controller was the best controller
Yep.
out at the time. It was slippery. I
Right about that,
will admit
man.
it was slippery. But it wasn't as bad as PS1.
Yeah.
But it definitely was the best console. That gaming library is ridiculous. If they ever were to do a backwards compatibility, I'm pretty sure the only console people would want it to be is PS2. If they just said they did PS2, people would be happy with that.
Yeah.
And if they do re-release a PS2, if I can find a real copy of NBA Street, I'd buy a re-released PS2. I want a remastered NBA Street, but I want them to leave it exactly how the original game was. You don't have to add any extra characters.
Just give us the GameCube version
Just-
if you're going to do that.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
just let it get a completely overhauled graphic wise.
Yeah. Keep
but
the same controls.
Updated roster.
Yeah.
Put the controls exactly how
I
they
don't
were.
even know if I want to update the roster. Leave it the same.
Nah, we need to update the roster, but I just don't want them trying to microtransaction it out
Yeah.
with all of this shit. Like, have the abominable snowman in there and all of those characters that you
my
love.
boy Biggie Little. That's all I care.
Biggie Little, come on, man.
That's all I need.
Shit, every team I had Jordan on it, and it had the abominable snowman at center, and then I had like my created character, I think, and that was it. And anytime I had a game, it would be the abominable snowman and Michael Jordan on the team, and it was always the old Michael Jordan. It wasn't the new Michael Jordan, because
Okay.
there was like 3 different Michael
Yeah.
Jordans. Great game, great console, best console there is.
I agree, man. PS2 is just iconic. I mean, that whole wave of gaming was just phenomenal.
Absolutely, man.
So I don't know. Any release has not topped that for me. So I'm waiting to see if, PlayStation 5 can be that. But PS2 will always go down. Like, I have so many discussions at school, everything. Just everybody was talking about PS2 no matter what. Even if you was an Xbox fan, you was still talking about PS2. So PS2 is iconic.
I did have 2 honorable mentions. PS4, it had some of the most classic video games that we've seen ever. And I went with Xbox 360 on my
Okay.
list. It was number 7.
Okay.
But, it wasn't for the games. I barely played in an Xbox exclusive. The only Xbox exclusive I owned was Crackdown, 2. I hated Fable. I hated them. I hated every single one. I felt like Xbox's exclusives have always sucked, except for Forza. Forza was great. Crackdown, and that's the thing. I like Forza's customization, because Gran
Which Forza
Turismo
did you
didn't
like?
have.
Which Forza did you
Forza 2 and 3 were really good.
like? Okay.
I felt like Gran Turismo didn't give you any customization. Like you had to pick the stock colors of the car, but mechanically it drove better than Forza. But Forza just let you customize,
Yeah.
and that's all I
Give a
cared
little
about.
bit more freedom.
Yeah, and you can download like vectors from people online to get the stuff for your car. And they had that 1 versus 100 game, which was fire that you could just play. You remember that?
Yep.
The online features were amazing. So it was more so for what the console could do. If Xbox could finally make some dope exclusives, they'd actually be a dope console. But since their exclusives always tend to suck to me, and I don't fuck with Bethesda, so that deal did nothing for me. They got a long way to go to win me over.
Yeah, man. I already talked about Dreamcast on my honorable mention. Game Boy would definitely be on there as well. I was a big fan of Game Boy Advance, especially Game Boy SP because that one had the backlight and everything like that. But man, taking that everywhere with me was dreams like come true. So, and there was a lot of great games on the Advance as well. I love the PSP, even though it was short lived. And yeah, man, it's a lot.
Shout out to the Sega Master System, too.
There you go.
All right, y'all. That's been this week's episode of the Report Card Podcast, man. Check back with us on Sunday and next Wednesday. I don't know what we're going to be reviewing. We're going to be reviewing whatever the hell came out. And then, we'll holler at y'all.
All right.
All right, y'all.
Peace.